being 14 years old and told, I have 6 weeks left in South Africa and we're moving to a new country in 6 weeks' time. So, that was a huge pivot. Everything I knew about life and, the way I lived was being turned upside down. And it was one of the greatest pivot points of my life, moving to a new country. Really difficult. My family left everything behind for a safer, better life. Pivot number 2, I would say, was actually taking some space after working pretty much nonstop. I'd felt since I was, in some ways 14 years old. Another huge pivot point was actually stopping and taking a year to really get connected to what I was passionate about again and really actually rest. It's really hard to change our mindset in the moment. And so there's this beautiful quote, and I hope I don't botch it up for your podcast, but it's something like, between stimulus and response, there is space. And in that space lies our freedom to choose. And in our choices lies our growth. And, I really that's also something I would just recommend to this audience is, don't beat yourself up if you're really triggered by the circumstance. Instead, create some space. Create some space for you to be reflective, for your emotions to settle, and for your attention to actually go to being intentional about how you are thinking about the circumstance, because it's really, really hard to do when we're in fight or flight mode. I think if you're an immigrant and you had a lot and you lost everything, you're really motivated to be successful, to achieve, to do well, to please. I just was, people used to throw things at me because why? I had the shoulders to carry them. And at some point, nothing seemed fun anymore for me. I just said, I have 2 young kids. I need to take a year, not to not work. In fact, I was actually quite successful as an entrepreneur that year, but where I'm not going to give every ounce of myself to something. I'm actually going to take the time to stop and get curious about what I'm actually passionate about and where in many ways I need to heal. Our circumstances, as you just mentioned, cause us to change. So I had this very shiny silver lining outside, right? I was ambitious. I was innovative. I was an achiever. I was responsible. I had a whole bunch of superpowers. I was highly resilient. And it's wonderful. I'm so proud of all those things I had to have because that was my circumstance in life. But what I always love to say to people is if you have something that's really shiny on the outside, what's the underbelly? What's underneath it that caused that shine? What got you to somewhere is not going to get you to that next level. And what got me to my next place was actually not focusing on my strengths anymore, but focusing on that messy underbelly that I'd never created the space to really, really deal with. Obviously, learning should be fun and it should be live and interactive, but disco is actually the Latin word for learn. And, we get really excited about that because, it's the root word for discussions and discourse. And it really is, we want to change learning from being this very static, consumption-driven, sage on stage thing to a much more dynamic and engaging experience.
And all this time, I thought disco was Latin for Saturday Night Fever.
Exactly.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, Make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.